My friends, have you ever found yourself burdened by the sheer weight of the world? As if every frustration, every minor setback, every disappointment accumulates upon your shoulders until you feel you can bear no more. I dare say we have all felt this way at some point. But what if I told you there is a way not to escape trouble, but to rise above it? A way to meet the trials of life, not with despair, but with quiet strength. Now, do not misunderstand me. I am not proposing a mere act of pretense, a hollow show of indifference to suffering. To suggest that we should simply ignore our troubles, put on a forced smile, and act as if nothing ever troubles us would be both naive and dishonest. Rather, what I am speaking of is a discipline of the mind, an inner posture of the soul that enables us to remain unshaken even when chaos surrounds us. Consider for a moment those whom we most admire: leaders in moments of crisis, doctors in the midst of calamity, artists who create beauty out of disorder, men and women who, in the face of adversity, do not crumble but remain steadfast. These people do not possess some magical immunity to stress, nor are they devoid of feeling. No, they too experience sorrow, frustration, and anger. But they have learned a secret. They do not let these emotions master them. The difference, my friends, is not in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of something greater, a deep-rooted conviction that external circumstances do not dictate one's inner state. And this is a lesson worth learning. Now let us pause and ask ourselves, how often do we allow minor inconveniences to rob us of our peace? The traffic jam that makes us late, the thoughtless words spoken by a friend, the spilled coffee that ruins a good shirt. Do we not let such things agitate us far more than they deserve? And in doing so, do we not surrender our peace of mind to the trivial and transient? The first step toward regaining control is to become aware of our own thoughts. When difficulties arise, where does your mind go? Do you instantly assume the worst? Do you nurse resentment and allow irritation to fester? If so, I urge you to consider an alternative. Instead of dwelling on frustration, recognize it for what it is, a passing disturbance, much like a stone dropped into a still lake. Yes, there will be ripples, but the water does not remain disturbed forever. In time, it returns to its natural state of calm. This, I believe, is how the soul ought to be: deep, steady, undisturbed by every passing wind. It is not a mind devoid of emotion, nor a heart incapable of feeling, but a spirit that refuses to be at the mercy of circumstance. The world will always provide reasons for distress, but we are not required to submit to them. Now, this is not to say that we ought to become stoic to the point of indifference. We are not called to be cold or unfeeling. Indeed, sorrow and anger have their rightful place, but they must not be given dominion over us. Our emotions should serve us, not rule us. I say again, we do not always have control over what happens to us, but we do have control over how we respond. We may not choose the trials that come our way, but we can choose whether to meet them with bitterness or with grace. You may be thinking, that sounds well enough in theory, but how does one live it out in practice? I tell you, as with all things worth mastering, it begins in small ways. Start with the daily irritations of life, the rude remark, the delay in plans, the broken appliance. These are your training grounds. Each time you catch yourself reacting with impatience or frustration, pause. Take a deep breath, choose a different response. And as you do, you will find something remarkable begins to happen. You will notice that the things which once disturbed you no longer have the same power over you. The world remains just as unpredictable as before, but you, your soul, your mind, your heart, are no longer tossed about by every shifting wave. For in the end, my friends, true strength is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of peace despite it. So I ask you, will you let the world dictate your spirit, or will you learn to stand firm, unshaken, like the stillness of deep waters? The choice, as always, is yours. There is a curious thing that happens when one begins to cultivate inner stillness. The very situations that once sent us into a state of distress begin to lose their power over us. What once seemed unbearable becomes manageable. What once triggered anger or anxiety now passes through us like a wave that breaks upon the shore but does not destroy it. This, you see, is the beginning of true mastery, not over the world, for we were never promised dominion over it, but mastery over ourselves. And the most remarkable thing? This kind of composure is not merely a private benefit, it radiates outward. If you have ever spent time with someone deeply anxious, you will know how their unease seeps into the air, how their restlessness can unsettle even the calmest among us. Likewise, when we stand firm in peace, that peace extends to those around us. A person of quiet strength becomes a lighthouse in a storm, a living demonstration that chaos need not dictate our response. But let me be clear, to carry oneself with dignity is not to tolerate cruelty or remain silent in the face of injustice. Far from it. To be unmoved by pettiness is one thing, to be indifferent to suffering is another altogether. The world has never been changed for the better by those who shrink from difficulty. Strength of character does not mean passivity, it means clarity. It means knowing the difference between that which deserves our engagement and that which merely seeks to disturb us for its own sake. Consider the towering figures of history, those who stood in the face of hatred and violence and did not let the poison of their oppressors seep into their own hearts. The civil rights leaders of the past did not shrink back when met with brutality. Neither did they allow their enemies to dictate the terms of their engagement. They did not retaliate with rage, but with resolve. They met cruelty with unwavering dignity, force with unbreakable conviction. They understood something too few of us realize. To react wildly to provocation is to hand power over to the very forces one seeks to resist. Now, most of us will not be called to endure such trials, nor will we be asked to march through streets lined with hatred or sit in defiant silence as the world jeers. But we will face our own tests. The question is not whether adversity will come. It always does. The question is whether we will meet it with wisdom or be swept away by it. There is an old image, simple but profound. The deep-rooted tree in the midst of a storm. The wind shakes its branches, the rain pounds its leaves, but the tree remains anchored. It does not flinch with every gust, nor does it collapse at the first sign of difficulty. Its strength is not in resisting the storm, but in being rooted so deeply that the storm cannot uproot it. This is the goal, not to escape life's troubles, but to grow the kind of soul that can withstand them. And if we are to develop such strength, we must learn to see clearly. So often, we exaggerate our trials, magnifying our discomforts until they seem unbearable. A minor inconvenience becomes a catastrophe. A single harsh word turns into a great personal wound. But what would happen if we stepped back, if we widened our gaze and refused to let trivial frustrations consume us? Gratitude, you see, is one of the most powerful remedies for distress. It is not that gratitude eliminates hardship, but that it places hardship in its proper context. A person who dwells only on what is missing in their life will always feel impoverished, no matter how much they have. But the one who sees with gratitude, who truly notices the undeserved gifts of each day, cannot help but stand in awe. Even in difficulty, they recognize the sheer miracle of existence, the gift of breath, the privilege of love, the endless opportunity to grow and to serve. And so, let us strive not merely to endure life's storms, but to become people whose very presence brings steadiness to those around us. Let us be unshaken, not because life is easy, but because we have chosen to live from a place of clarity, of strength, and of grace. There is a great misunderstanding about gratitude, one that leads many to dismiss it as a shallow, sentimental exercise. Gratitude is not a naive insistence that all is well when, in fact, all is falling apart. It is not a refusal to acknowledge hardship or a command to ignore suffering. It is, rather, the recognition that even in the darkest of times, light still exists. Though it may be faint, though it may flicker, it is there for those willing to see. We are often tempted to believe that our troubles define the whole of our reality. We fixate on what is broken, what is missing, what is wrong, and in doing so, we blind ourselves to the fullness of life. But gratitude, true gratitude, is an exercise in seeing. It trains us to perceive reality as it truly is, not merely as it appears through the lens of despair. And one way to cultivate such a perspective is to remember our own strength. I do not mean the fleeting kind of strength that comes and goes with the tides of circumstance, but the deep resilience that has carried us through every hardship we have ever faced. Consider for a moment the countless trials you have endured, every disappointment, every failure, every grief. Yet here you are. You have survived the worst days of your life thus far. That is no small thing. How often do we underestimate our own ability to endure? We imagine ourselves fragile, unable to withstand discomfort, and yet every day, in ways both small and great, we prove otherwise. Every moment we push through weariness, every time we choose patience over anger, every instance in which we summon the courage to speak the truth or face an uncertain future, we reinforce a truth we too often forget. We are stronger than we believe, and strength, like any other virtue, grows with practice. The more we remind ourselves of our resilience, the more we act upon it, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling reality. The person who believes they can meet difficulty with grace will, more often than not, do just that. But let us not be mistaken. This does not mean we must be unmoved by hardship. We are not statues. We are living beings, and to live is to feel. We will know moments of anger, moments of fear, moments of sorrow. This is part of being human, but the goal is not perfection. It is progress. Resilience is not a matter of never being shaken, but of learning, each time we stumble, how to regain our footing more quickly. And in those moments when we do lose our composure, when frustration overtakes us or old wounds resurface, we would do well to pay attention. For these moments are not merely failures, they are opportunities. Every wise teacher throughout history has taught the importance of self-awareness, and for good reason. How can we hope to change our habits if we do not first see them for what they are? We must be willing to look within, not with condemnation, but with honest curiosity. When irritation arises, we ought to ask, what is this moment teaching me? What part of me is being tested? Is my frustration rooted in pride? Is my impatience a sign of misplaced priorities? It is far easier to point outward, to blame circumstances or other people for our distress. But the person who truly desires to cultivate composure must be willing to look inward, not to indulge in endless self-criticism, but to learn. The one who asks, "What can I gain from this struggle?" is the one who will grow stronger through it. And as we grow in this way, something remarkable happens. The world begins to lose its power to disturb us. The insults of others, the inconveniences of life, the unexpected setbacks, these things, which once provoked such strong reactions, begin to lose their hold. We learn to pause before responding, to choose our words and actions rather than be ruled by impulse. But let us be clear. This does not mean we become indifferent or passive. True composure is not the absence of feeling, nor is it weakness. On the contrary, it is a form of strength far greater than anger or forcefulness. It is the ability to stand firm without being shaken, to remain steady even when the world around us is in turmoil. Consider a wise and loving parent. Such a person does not resort to shouting or threats to maintain order in the home. Instead, they set firm, clear boundaries with a quiet confidence that commands respect. They do not allow their emotions to dictate their actions, nor do they allow the whims of their children to manipulate them. This is composure in action, not the suppression of feeling, but the mastery of it. And this principle extends beyond parenthood. In every relationship, in every conflict, in every challenge, we are given the opportunity to choose how we will respond. Will we react with frustration, lashing out in ways we later regret? Or will we meet the moment with clarity, with self-control, with a steady hand? The choice is ours, and the more we choose wisely, the easier the choice becomes. We cannot always control what happens to us, but we can always choose how we respond. And in that choice lies a power greater than any circumstance, greater than any hardship, greater than the fleeting storms of life. For the one who has mastered themselves need not fear what the world may bring. There is a distinction, a vital one, between reacting and responding. A reaction is swift, instinctive, and often fueled by the heat of emotion. A response, on the other hand, is deliberate, measured, and rooted in wisdom. The art of responding rather than reacting is not merely a skill, it is a discipline, one that shapes our relationships, our influence, and ultimately, our own peace of mind. It is possible, and indeed necessary, to disagree without being disagreeable. One need not raise one's voice to make a point, nor must one diminish another to stand firm in conviction. True composure does not mean detachment. Rather, it signals an inner security so strong that it does not need to lash out or control others. And here is the curious thing. When we cultivate this poise, it extends beyond ourselves. It sets a tone in the world around us, creating an atmosphere of stability where others feel at ease. It cools tempers before they flare, quiets anxieties before they grow, and invites those around us to rise to the same level of calm. Throughout history, those who have most profoundly shaped the world, whether in the realm of politics, science, faith, or the arts, have been those who did not allow turmoil to shake them. They faced opposition, scorn, even danger, yet they remained steady, not because they were immune to fear, but because they had anchored themselves in something greater than fear. They understood that leadership is not about position, but about presence, and this kind of leadership is not reserved for the few. It is within reach for anyone willing to cultivate it. So, where does one begin? How does a person become unshaken in a world that trembles? The first step is intention. It is no small thing to decide, consciously, deliberately, that one will not be ruled by external chaos. A mind does not drift into peace. It must be trained toward it. This decision should not be made lightly, but once made, it ought to be sealed in thought, word, and action. Write it down, speak it aloud, let it take root. Then, begin to notice. Notice how easily the mind is drawn into irritation. Observe how quickly one takes offense, how swiftly one's emotions shift from calm to distress at the smallest inconvenience. This is not a matter of condemnation, but of awareness. We cannot change what we do not first recognize. When you feel yourself gripped by frustration, pause. Take a breath. Let the moment pass through you, rather than allowing it to take hold of you. This is not to say that hardship should be ignored. Quite the opposite. It should be met squarely, but without surrendering your peace. A mind that is constantly tangled in frustration cannot think clearly, nor can it perceive solutions where they exist. Strength is not found in denial, but in the ability to remain steady in the presence of difficulty. There is also a practical side to this discipline. The mind, like the body, requires care. A person who is exhausted, overwhelmed, or depleted will find it far more difficult to exercise restraint. Therefore, attend to your well-being. Rest. Nourish yourself well. Engage in activities that restore rather than drain you, and seek the company of those whose presence steadies rather than agitates. It is often said that we become like those with whom we spend our time. Surround yourself with people who embody patience, grace, and fortitude. Learn from them. And in doing so, you will, perhaps without even realizing it, become such a person for someone else. Of course, there will be days when this practice falters. There will be moments when irritation gets the better of you, when you say the thing you later regret, when frustration wins the moment. Do not be discouraged. Perfection is not the goal. Perseverance is. If you falter, recognize it, learn from it, and begin again. Each moment is a fresh opportunity to choose composure over chaos. Over time, you will notice a shift. The things that once disturbed your peace will begin to lose their grip. Your perspective will broaden, your responses will slow, and you will find yourself freer from the tyranny of petty annoyances, freer from the need to control what cannot be controlled, freer to invest your energy in what truly matters. This is not about pretending to be indifferent, nor is it about silencing one's emotions or becoming an unfeeling creature. It is about mastery, not of others, but of oneself. To cultivate this resilience is to step into a kind of strength that no external force can take from you. It is to walk through the world with a steadiness that not only benefits you, but extends to all who cross your path. So take a breath, stand firm, and step forward into your day, not with rigid resistance, but with quiet strength. The storms may come, but they need not shake you. In time, what began as a conscious effort will become second nature. And from that place of unshaken peace, there is no limit to the good that you can bring into the world. And so, my friends, as you step into the rest of your day, I invite you to carry this thought with you. Peace is not found in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of a steady heart. The world will always have its storms, its frustrations, its unexpected twists. But you have the power to choose how you will meet them. Will you be shaken, or will you stand firm? Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between reacting with frustration or responding with wisdom? How do you practice keeping your peace in the midst of life's chaos? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone, and I truly appreciate the conversations we have here. And if this message encouraged you today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder to stand firm. Thank you for spending this time with me. May you walk in strength, in wisdom, and in unshakable peace. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.